Welcome everyone to Quantum Leap. I'm your host, Toyin Umesiri. With me in the studio here in downtown Aurora is Mr. Sam Odeh, a very special guest with us today. Welcome to Aurora.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down from Chicago. I really do appreciate this visit.
Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So, Mr. Sam Odeh is the founder and CEO of Power Energy Corporation USA, and is currently the chair of the Illinois District Export Council, which I'm also proud to be a member of. So, thank you so much for your leadership. Mr. Sam's global experience spans over 30 years and includes strong relationship and leadership under Mobil Oil and ExxonMobil, where he had a great international leadership experience, traveling the world, well traveled. And we're going to be hearing, experience from your experience and insights from you today. So thank you so much for being here. You have great export experience, which includes multiple global advisory and development of downstream oil and renewable fuel integration and blending for environmental green energy, which you're going to share a little bit with us as well. You're going to educate us today. And so you're really big on economic empowerment, economic development, empowering the business community, educating the business community, connecting us with resources, government resources as well. So I'm super excited and honored, deeply honored to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Toyin. And we are proud to have you on LDEC, as well as proud to have all of our colleagues who are also here with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, while I've given just a high level of your experience, there's so much deep in there. How would you help us understand your job at the Power Energy Group? What do you do? What does it cover? I know you also have global expansion. Would you care to just share with us highlights on your work, your great work?
Sure. As any leader, you have to define your vision, and primary responsibility for me is the vision of bringing biofuels to the petroleum industry. This has been a vision of 22 years. It started after the oil companies started divesting their facilities and sites and basically departing the downstream retail business. And the opportunity came about to introduce biofuels, especially here in Illinois, because we have an abundance of, as you all know, agriculture foundation in terms of both ethanol, which is derived from an agriculture product, obviously corn, and also soybean. So having it here in our backyard made it very feasible, as well as very available to us to expand. This today, this dream, this vision, actually is sitting at over 500 sites in the state of Illinois, currently sell biofuels. We are also honored to say and forecast our growth will be probably another 500 sites in the next 5 years. And yet it started in a single site over 22 years ago, and it has matured. Today, we are the fifth largest industry in terms of both export and domestic impact in terms of economic value in the biofuels.
So, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm sure it hasn't been too easy, but I'm glad and really proud of the successes that you're achieving, not just for your own company, but also the states, where the state sits because of the great work you're doing. And I know you've gotten, recognitions as well for that great work. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You serve as chairman of the Illinois District Export Council, and I also have the opportunity of serving with you. Thank you so much for your leadership. So who are we as the IDEC? Who are we? What do we do? How do we serve people? And for the business community in Illinois, what can we do for them?
Sure. As you know, the structure of LDAC is through the Department of Commerce. We are an arm of the Department of Commerce to help them with their initiatives and to create awareness and to connect basically people. One of the things that attracted me personally to it was the people-to-people diplomacy. That to me is the key thing. The key aspect of, in terms of LDEC mission, stems from Washington, D.C., from the Department of Commerce. The Secretary of Commerce appoints every one of these professionals who go through a vet process, both them personally and their company, which it does help in terms of making sure the talent on LDEC is an extraordinary talent that could truly help the most important mission, and that is to help export trade, specifically small enterprise companies from Illinois through the world. That's in a nutshell what it is. I think the key to growing and to continue defining ourselves and to continue reimagining ourselves is the key. One of the things I love working with all the LDEC members is everyone is unique and different in what they bring to the table, including here today. So that's, I think, the key is to continue to build on it and to continue to get the awareness out to specifically the two stakeholders. A, the exporters who are sitting at their home, or small businesses wondering how they can go out to the world. And B, all of our alliances through our embassies, through our Department of Commerce, through the State Department, all the government agencies, in bringing back that awareness to us here so we can connect the people-to-people diplomacy, which then will connect the economic development.
Wow, thank you so much. People-to-people diplomacy, I love that. So if I'm an exporter here in Illinois, given your experience, what are key things that we should be considering, right? So for someone who is starting to explore exports, you have traveled the world, you've been to different nations, you've participated in a lot of trade engagements as well. So what are some pointers for Illinois exporters that may be considering exports right now?
That's a very large question. But, I think, again, the difference in my era, and I am not that old, but for the record, we didn't have the tools that we have today.
Okay.
Today, we have a lot of tools. The average person has something called the mobile device, who connects them to the world. I look at that as a huge advantage to, as they call it, surf the world, right? But really, it's crucial that any exporter defines their business plan. I learned a theory, a business concept back in my day without the tools that we have today, called dive. And I never understood it, why it was called dive, but as you will hear, you'll understand why. And when they used to deploy us, which, like military, the foreign relations would say, you need to go into that country like you're diving to that country. You need to basically understand that you are going to set those goals and missions and parameters. So I said, okay, what does it stand for? Because I'm sure somebody thought it out. And number one is definition. Define. Define exactly what you want. Even on a grander scale, you may be sitting saying, well, I just want to create a product to export to Canada. But it's okay to visualize or to envision that your product could be throughout the world. The second was investigate. Ensure that today's investigation wasn't like our investigation. Our investigation was old school. We had to go to the country, hire some people in the country, work with people in the country to truly know if our product is viable. Today, again, tools, technology, information, network channels, Even different programs such as yours wasn't even available to connect the business community. The V, I just mentioned it earlier, visualize. There's got to be a vision. You have to have a vision, whether it's $1 vision or $1 billion vision, whether it's one product vision or 100 million unit vision. You have to set that vision and work on that vision. Because as they used to tell us, in the days when I work, is you're not going to recreate the oil company. It's already there. What you're going to do is you're going to grow it and you're going to make it profitable. So their vision was clear to us. Wow. I think a lot of exporters that I talk to sometimes really lack just that simple principle, vision. Last but not least, it's the most important. Earnings. Your earn, your sweat, your equity. What is it? What are you doing it for? Are you doing it for charity? Are you doing it for your wealth? Are you doing it for the wealth of others? Are you doing it? You have to define your earnings in every way, both personal and business.
Wow, thank you so much. Since I've known you, I've also found out that you're very, very, very great at relationships. So when it comes to exporting or business itself, we tend to do business with people we know, like, and trust. What are the key principles, personal principles that you've adopted that have allowed you to continue to build strategic relationships that have helped you to be successful, be it here in the US or even going international? Any tips for those who are looking to go beyond their comfort zone, right? Go into new countries, new places, new regions of the world. What helps people succeed in building new relationships from an international perspective?
If I was going to summarize one word, humble. That's really the key. You have to always look at who you're engaging with. You have to know their culture. You have to know their religion. You have to know what they do for fun. Yes. One of the things that we do as an industry, the oil and gas industry, we spend millions and millions of dollars on building relationships. And we used to call it the core. And the reason was the core because we had a product that was easy to sell, really. I mean, when you think about it, everybody needed energy, especially 20, 30 years ago, where today you have a lot of multiple different energy sources. But we knew that if we can get the trust factor and build the relationship with the country, and primarily we were working with governments. So we were not working with entrepreneurs. Very few entrepreneurs were in the oil and gas outside the United States, including Canada and Mexico, our closest two neighbors. So what would happen is their government would completely work different than our government. So everything that we were trained here to do with our government was really not being able to use outside the United States. Because their government was more engaged in business, because the energy sector was business to them. Now that's on a grand scale, energy. I think when you bring it down a couple of steps or notches, as they say, when it comes to export, especially consumer goods or especially services, I believe 100% relationship of trust, humbleness, and care is your only trade secrets. And that's something every person has. The question, are they willing to utilize and are they willing to show? And I think you said it earlier, the advice I would give, don't hold it in, bring it out.
Wonderful. And definitely I appreciate that, because even with our group, the Illinois District Export Council, part of it is that our combined relationship also is something that Illinois exporters can really leverage if they're trying to connect to someone. So can we talk about that a little bit in terms of how do they reach out to us? Websites, information, and for them to also know that we get to connect them to our government counterparts as well.
Yes. You know, we're very fortunate here. I've had the opportunity to visit NADEC as well as work with other decks and throughout the country. And I will tell you, by far, I know it sounds a little biased, our LDEC is superior. And when you look at the portfolio of each person and what they bring, we have a diverse group, great experiences, including our government partners. I think, you know, I've worked a lot with government and government personnel can be sometimes challenging because they have different rules to work with. But it's the person that delivers that message clearly on behalf of that government agency. I've always said, you know, one of my favorite lines was always, well, I have a problem with this government agency. And I said, great, this government agency talks. I want to meet them, you know. And I said, no, you have a problem with a person in that government agency who unfortunately portrays that government agency. And also there's a good thing, right? When there is a good person in the government agency, they're also pertain the difference with LDEC, the uniqueness is they're entrepreneurs. Number one, every one of them works in some fashion of their own company or their own division. The second thing is they have their own networking, which could be defined multiple layers of opportunities. I can tell you every request that came through to us by the Department of Commerce, by former LDEC members, by current LDEC members, we were able to connect the dots. We were able to connect the potential export idea to the export expert within days, which is remarkable when you think about it. And I've had foreign delegations come in where I've reached out to LDEC members and government partners and said, please come and engage. I consider us an ambassador. That is the one word. We are an ambassador to bring the exporter to basically the supply and demand. Because the supply and demand is not defined easily. The exporter is actually who has to define the supply and demand. But we have a role as LDEC, as ambassadors, to connect them, whether to government agency stakeholders, like Exim Bank, obviously here with Ursula, like the CEO, you know, Margot and her team at the state level, and like Dan with the Department of Commerce, and which can take it back to Washington, D.C. and his team and his department, as well as other departments. You know, we're very fortunate that Dan has a great team here in Chicago who is continuing to build on, continuing to offer great programs and services. Just matter of fact, you know, we are getting ready for one of what I call the premiere, the Super Bowl of the Department of Commerce. And DGM, which will be here September 19th. We were yesterday fortunate as the executive committee, Lisa and I and Steve, to visit with them and with the Department of Commerce and see where it's going to be held. And I can tell you that that particular building, that particular company, that particular resources is going to be an eye-opener to even just your typical ambassador LDEC member. Because we walked in and it was like Disney World of innovation, and it was really informative.
Wow, thank you so much. So while we are here in Aurora, any key messages to the business community here in terms of pursuing exports as a growth opportunity for their businesses? Any encouraging words for us here in Aurora? Because, you know, we are the second largest city next to Chicago. You know, but we also need to, you know, access more trade information. We also need to build more strategic relationship. And I know personally for me, it's about also building a new culture around international trade development in the city. So, any advice for us here in Aurora from your deep experience?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I currently serve on Sister City International Program with the City of Chicago, and I'm very proud that we were, signed a treaty, the Sister City Treaty, with Jordan and the City of Chicago. And I happen to be with the background of Jordanian. I think the reason I tell this story, because this is the story, this is the advice, is I am sure there are people here in Aurora that come from all over the world. First, identify those, because they are your best ambassadors. Obviously, they live here, they work here, they have some love for the city here. And they make them, empower them to connect with their countries. I think one of the things that I will tell you, the leadership of Mayor Daley was, he set the goal that we want to be a global city. So he set the vision, but then he made sure and he empowered us. And I was fortunate to go on 3 delegations with him personally to those countries when there was, and some of the successes were selling Boeing aircraft, planes to countries of Jordan, which then mushroomed into selling other Arab countries in the Middle East, where there was a dominance from France and the Airbus product. That's just one. ADM was another successful agriculture product. But bringing it back to Aurora, start with your people, start with what you have, empower them, find out where they're from, find out who they know. I think you'll be shocked that maybe somebody here, it could be a prime minister's cousin or a minister of energy. It has happened to us. Obviously, Chicago has a lot more. But I think the key of how do you expose yourself is through those ambassadors. And it's I'm sure you're limited on budgets, as we were in Chicago, and you're limited on how much resources. Reliance on people is the goal. And the people should network you, whether to the government, private sector, or on that international market. That would be my advice to you.
That's a great one. Thank you so much. And my final question is usually more leadership oriented. In terms of all the successes you've achieved, in terms of all the successes you've achieved, what would be your top one or top 2 success secrets that you would be kind enough to share with my audience?
I would tell you I was very fortunate in the oil and gas industry in an era where mentorship, we use it today very loosely, but it's not really practiced. I was mentored by 3 individuals that are probably responsible for 10% of the world energy, not just the United States energy. And I'm very fortunate. I had a personal situation where my father died. I was young. I walked in as an intern, and I became that role where I was looking for that leadership. And I was fortunate to find it. And I would tell you today, I owe it to those 3 people. No doubt about it. In terms of the trade secret, there's very little trade secret in the oil and gas. I mean, we're very who we are, what we are. I think the trade secret, as I said earlier, was the opportunity to be humble and to jump ship, get out of your comfort zone, get out of Chicago, get out of Illinois, get out of the USA. And was when they deployed me, I remember I shared with you earlier before we started, when I did the Africa region, which started in Egypt all the way down to close to South Africa, I was 28 years old. To send someone 28 years old is very similar to sometimes the way we're deploying some of our young to the military. And in the military, you actually have the government, you have teams, you're trained, you are also pretty much secured, believe it or not, more than the private sector. Because, while our company was large enough and we had people on the ground, but we had to go in and customize ourselves to that environment.
Wow.
So, from the food to the way we buy clothes so I think, again, humbleness, adaptation. I tell my two kids today, they're not kids, if you can serve anything to represent our country, go for it. And I'm very fortunate that both of them are involved, with countries that they go. But it has to stem with the person. The person has to adapt and be humble. That's a trade secret. In terms of Aurora, I would tell you, Aurora is missing out on the biofuel industry. I happen to drive here, and I can tell you, for being the second largest city, to have one site in the whole city of Aurora on biofuels, you are missing. And significantly, those are savings that you should be looking at very seriously. And if we can help in any way,
I'm sure.
that's my sales pitch.
I'm sure we're going to make something happen. I'm
Excellent.
sure the city would love to have that conversation with you and your leadership. Thank you so much, Mr. Sam, for being on the show. And thank you, everyone, for joining me today on Quantum Leap. And I'll see you again next week.